Hey, thanks for checking out the ToddCast YouTube channel. Be sure to like and subscribe so you don't miss any of our updates. So my guest today is somebody I've had on this podcast before. He's got a lot of titles and a lot of things I want to talk to him about. He's currently the governor of Kentucky. He's also currently the chair of the Democratic Governors Association, which means he's the lead governor to decide sort of campaign strategy for what states to target, which governor's races. We're going to have a lot of conversations about that. As governor of Kentucky, he's got some interest in what's going on with all things Mitch McConnell. And of course, he's not been shy about his thoughts on the presidential race. We'll talk about that. And he's not only, like I said, a governor, and it's sort of now a campaign advisor, if you will, but he's also got his own new podcast that will also be a part of SiriusXM's. It's SiriusXM's Andy Beshear podcast. So not only after you listen to him with me, then you can go like and subscribe his podcast as well if you enjoyed this conversation. So with that, let me bring in the governor. Governor Beshear, it's good to see you.
It is great to be on.
So look, before I get to sort of a bunch of these questions, this one of the coolest political events that takes place around the country is the Fancy Farm Picnic. I am speaking to you, I believe, about 3 or 4 days before it opens. I'm guessing you've been going to this since before you remember going to this.
I have been a number of times with my family growing up, when I was running for Attorney General and serving, many times while I've been governor. While I won't make it this year, we are going to have both candidates for U.S. Senate. We're going to have multiple announced candidates on the Democratic side for governor. And so it will be an opportunity to start hearing what people's earliest pitch is. And then you always have to throw in, 1 or 2 one-liners. But if you're doing it right, and it's always tough, if you're doing it right, you're funny, you're not mean, and it's an opportunity to actually talk about what you would do.
Look, one of my first great memories was going to locally. It was the Dante Fascell picnic, and he used to be a member of Congress down in Miami for forever. And I've been to a variety of different of these political events. Virginia's got one. I think everybody wants to fry a fish of some sort. There's always, sometimes at one of these events.
We do that
but
too.
I worry that they're going to start fading because we don't like to be in the same room with each other, and the polarization. And that's why I really love Fancy Farm, is that it still seems to be a magnet that everybody realizes, you know what, we all got to go here, no matter what you think of the hard right, hard left, center right, center left.
Well, I agree that we need to be in the same room together. We do need to get back to a level of civility that I hope Fancy Farm will live up to this year. Sometimes it's struggled a little bit. It's one where, again, you can be funny. People know that there is conflict, but you don't have to be a jerk. And that's a problem in our politics right now. We can argue. We can push really hard for the things that we believe in. But the problem with the Trump administration, one of the many, is how far they go over the line. They try to make someone who has different political beliefs an enemy, actually calling them the enemy from within. If you are out there running, that is patriotic in and of itself. And trying to cast each other as anti-American, which happens in a lot of these rooms, is I think one of the reasons we don't see it as much.
You're not going, look, this is the fall, you've got this national position, I kind of understand, and you're not going to be on the ballot in Kentucky, perhaps.
I'm not going because it is my son's final travel baseball tournament of his high school career. He's going to play college ball, which is exciting.
Oh, that is great. Where's he going?
He's going to Swarthmore. So smart kid. Nice. We're really proud of him. But this is my last opportunity to watch him play like this, and I'm always going to put my family first.
No, you will. I learned this too many ways the hard way. No matter what somebody tells you how important some event is, you don't remember why you missed a family. You don't remember the event you missed on your family side of things 10 years later. You always remember the family event you missed for some political thing you can't remember.
Right. And I've got an amazing family. When people say, how do you put up with politics? I say I've got a wife and kids that love me and a dog that kind of likes me. But being able to spend this last amount of time, I've got a son who's a rising senior, a daughter who's a rising junior. So
Yeah.
Brittany and I will be empty nesters in about 2 years. And while
Yeah.
teenagers can be difficult, I still want to spend as much time as I can before they head off.
Well, Governor, I'm this is Mrs. ToddCast and I's first summer of empty nesting. It's strange, but I will tell you this: parenting doesn't end. That's all I'm going to say. The parenting doesn't end when they leave when they leave home.
The next time I'm on, I'm sure I'll be asking for advice.
Anyway, let me start with news of the moment. You've been pretty publicly, I guess I would say, concerned about the lack of information you're getting from Senator McConnell's office and from Senator McConnell. Have you spoken with Senator McConnell? And if you haven't, who have you spoken with that is as close to McConnell as you've been able to get?
I haven't spoken to the senator, and he has now been gone from work in a hospital for about 6 weeks. And anybody out there who works a job and has a boss couldn't take 6 weeks off without calling that boss and saying, here's what's going on, and here's when I can return to work. Well, when you're a senator or a governor, your boss are the people that elected you. There is a duty for Senator McConnell to level with the people of Kentucky and to prove that he still has the ability to do this job. That's not some mean thing I'm trying to press on him. It is the basic honesty and transparency that people deserve. And his failure to do it has fueled this wild speculation, especially online, about what's going on. And that's on him.
Yeah.
You know, supposedly he's had a 17-minute conversation with one of his proteges, but he can't call a TV station and have a 3-minute conversation. And that just adds more fuel to the fire. Now, those who are saying we don't think he has the ability to continue to serve have been calling on me to do things that a governor can't do. Right? If a state level officer could declare a vacancy in a federal office, then you would have seen lots of things happen in our history.
Yeah, we might have had more than one civil war if you did things like that. Yeah.
So there are 3 ways that a vacancy can be created based on our research. 1 is a death, 2 is a resignation, or 3 is an expulsion from the Senate. Right. And so I've called on John Thune. He's the majority leader. He's got a duty to ensure that the members of his caucus have the capacity to serve, and he's right there in D.C. He can go see Mitch McConnell. He can report on how he's doing, and we can put all that speculation to rest.
He has supposedly talked with Scott Jennings, John Thune, and John Barrasso. Do you believe that he has actually talked with those 3 people?
Well, you'd have to ask those 3 people. But when John Thune got a letter from me saying, it's your job to make sure that Mitch McConnell's okay and can continue to serve, he said that's between Mitch and the people of Kentucky. That is a concerning answer from the majority leader. And Scott Jennings works for CNN and refuses to call him on air. I didn't know you could do that. When you actually work for a network, you have a source, and the story is that big. I guess the rules are different for him than for others.
Yeah, that is up to CNN to how they plan to enforce how people prove their reporting. I will tell you why I've been less bothered by this than others, and it's that it does feel as if his term's coming to an end. There really is, there's I know the conspiracy theories is that they're afraid that somehow you'll be able to call on a special. It's like the window is too small. And I'm guessing the last thing you want to do is deal with a special election to fill out a month and a half of a term. So what do you believe is the harm here?
Well, I believe that the harm is a senator refuses to level with the people that he serves about how he is doing. And that is the most basic duty in any of these offices. I will say this. Some people say, well, if this was in the reverse, Mitch McConnell would be ruthless. Well, you know what he would be? Knowing him my entire life, he would be ruthlessly tactical. And what we're seeing right now, what we're seeing right now is a special election would probably go Republican. We haven't had a Democratic U.S. Senator in Kentucky since 1992. So to those online that are thinking this through, what I'd say is right now, with him not showing up to work, There's one less vote for the SAVE Act, one less vote to support the president's war of choice on Iran.
Right.
There is one less vote for a potential replacement of a conservative Supreme Court justice. And if there was a replacement via special election, they would probably be more beholden to Trump than even Mitch McConnell is.
I'm glad you point this out, because if you want to just totally look at this through a partisan lens, the people who should be angriest about this are not the folks on the left. It should be the folks in Trump's corner, because here's what we also know. Mitch McConnell's no automatic vote on most of Trump's stuff these days. Whatever you think of McConnell politically on the left, he's no Trump fan either.
You would think that the other Republican U.S. senators would be pushing for transparency because they are one vote down. But my goal as
don't you
governor,
think this is where the conspiracy theories are actually percolating the hottest, are actually on the right-hand side of the information ecosystem?
I think they're percolating everywhere at this point because
sadly
6 weeks, 2 photos, and 2 official statements just in this world where you do this and I've got a podcast and we have social media. It's just so little that it creates this vacuum.
Look, I don't know if you've seen The Odyssey yet. Have you seen The Odyssey?
I have not seen it yet.
Okay, so I won't quote The Odyssey
for you yet.
It's hard
to find 3+ hours as governor to be at the
I hear you, but go find it. All I will say is go find it. It's 3 hours that you won't feel like you wasted. But essentially, there's a running theme about the golden rule. It's called the Zeus's law, but it's the golden rule. And I've been thinking about this a lot when it comes to politics. And on this McConnell thing, I'm of mixed message, because you're absolutely right. McConnell would never be giving grace to the other side in a moment like this. He is, you never let a moment to be wasted to advance your agenda, advance your party. That is what has made him effective and arguably unpopular, right? Like when you're that ruthless about it. So I understand. So there's a part of my brain that has very little empathy for the situation he finds himself in because of the ruthless ways he practiced. You do unto others as you want done unto you, and so you could respond. But let me flip it here. Are you comfortable that this has gotten this way? And if he were a member of your party, would you be as aggressive if you weren't getting answers?
Well, I think you make a good point in that I don't believe the way that Democrats win elections and ultimately govern is to be a Democratic version of McConnell or a Democratic version of Trump. We are set to do well in the congressional races. We have a chance to make a run at the U.S. Senate. We're going to win governor's races in places people aren't expecting, and none of that is us acting like the opposite or acting like Trump and McConnell. It's offering people a better alternative and an actual focus not on politics, but on prices and people's daily lives. I live my life by that golden rule. My faith is my why. The golden rule says to treat everyone like my neighbor, and the parable of the Good Samaritan says everyone is my neighbor. But yes, I'm comfortable with what I'm asking for here, because I would fully expect if I was gone for 6 weeks as governor, for someone to say, hey, you need to talk to the people of Kentucky. If I'm out a week, I'm expected to do that.
By the way, you can't even go on the Appalachian Trail anymore as governor, considering what happened. Yeah, what happened to a governor that once claimed he did that. Sorry,
I'm not sure I want to touch that one. But if you go back to COVID, which I had to govern through, if you were exposed as governor, you needed to come forward, even though you could still work, even though maybe you had to isolate for a period of time. So I'm more than comfortable in how I'm calling for it. The challenge here is it continues to add fuel to the fire when he simply refuses to do a short video, and it creates the impression that maybe he can't. Now, I certainly hope that he can. I've known his members of his family for a good part of my life, and we want him to be okay. But the people of Kentucky deserve a basic level of transparency.
What is the relationship between McConnell and your dad and you and McConnell? I say this because there's a part of me that knows that that in a lot of these political, these states where you've had very successful politicians from opposite parties, there's this over time grudging respect and friendship and all this. I don't sense that here.
Oh, I think that we are all civil to each other. Now, my dad ran against Mitch McConnell. in
I remember the
1996.
race.
And that didn't turn out well for the Beshears. But Mitch McConnell has now tried to beat me 3 straight times in a
That
Trump
didn't turn
plus
out well for
31
him.
state.
Yeah.
And we have beaten him every single time.
Right. Well, it's an unfortunate way that this is ending in his career on
That's
this.
That's a really good point. And I was thinking about, he talks about his legacy a lot. And he talks about being the longest serving leader in the Senate. But what he's doing right now by failing to come forward and being transparent may mean more of the Wikipedia page that's written about him is going to be about this than anything else. But that's on him.
You know who I was just going to say, I want to go back and check, but I wonder what his thoughts were on Robert Byrd at the very end, when frankly he had no business being in the United States Senate.
Well,
and here he was, very. And I think in some ways McConnell sees himself as the Byrd heir in some ways, right? As the institutionalist and cares so much about it. But you hang on too long, and all the work you think you've accomplished, you may have set some new precedents, but I'm not sure it's going to play the way you think it's going to play.
You look at today, while we're recording this, Rand Paul has dragged in an 85-year-old Anthony Fauci because he says he has to answer to the American people. But he won't ask an 84-year-old Mitch McConnell to do the same. And Fauci is retired, and McConnell is a serving U.S. senator. And all of these folks talked about Biden and how he was doing. Well, guess what? Biden was showing up. Biden was speaking, yes, into a microphone. It is night and day from what they criticized to their refusal to ask for just a little bit of honesty and directness right now.
Well, look, I was actually going to bring this up. You certainly have your United States senators do their best to try to make news. This I think it's a character assassination on Tony
Agreed.
Fauci. And if you started to prosecute everybody in Washington who got a bit self-absorbed, there'd be nobody left to serve. So I think if his greatest sin is simply he enjoyed hanging out with Julia Roberts, okay, how much should we flog him for this? I don't quite get Rand Paul to me is somebody who I constantly am glad that he's one of the 100, because we have a very diverse political set of Americans. And I think he does represent a part of the country, a part of the electorate that doesn't have a lot of say so in the Senate. So, and I'm somebody who thinks all these voices, there needs to be voices, right? We need some socialists, you need this. Ultimately, you figure it out somewhere. Everybody has some say on this. And a lot of times, Rand Paul will bring up issues that make everybody uncomfortable, left and right. And so this feels like a personal vendetta. Do you understand where this comes from and the source of this?
It absolutely feels like a personal vendetta. I mean, to kick someone's lawyer out of a hearing while they're testifying, and then you heard not only his questioning, but Josh Hawley's. And he's got the poster of Anthony Fauci up, but look at how many hours Josh Hawley spends on his hair every morning before he steps out in front of that camera. So self-absorption isn't anything new in those rooms. I was there when this was happening. I was a new governor. I was 3 months in. And I remember the calls. Mike Pence had set up the team, and I will actually give Mike Pence credit. He set up a good team. He was available.
I've heard this from a variety of governors, left, right, center, you name it, that Pence was basically the most competent West Wing official you could deal with. It.
You could get him in 30 minutes. Didn't matter if you were a Democrat or a Republican. You could get Fauci or others on the phone. This attempt at revisionist history about shutting down the economy, I was on that call too. And you know who told us to do it? Donald J. Trump directly. About doing it. And now attacking what was their own team, is pretty crazy. And I guess this really interesting world we're living in right now. But I think back to the fact that Donald Trump has had multiple Mount Rushmore moments. And I know he thinks that he should be up there. If he would have followed the medical and health advice, his administration would have created the fastest vaccine to end a pandemic in human history, and he would have won re-election running away, and he couldn't do it because a small group of folks bent on conspiracy theories were out there, and he would rather glom onto that than save as many lives as possible and ultimately do the right thing.
This episode of the Chuck ToddCast is brought to you by Chapter. Now, almost everything you hear about Medicare is somebody quietly trying to steer you somewhere. And you're skeptical of that, as you should be. I get it. I mean, there's a federal lawsuit going on right now over exactly this. Companies that branded themselves as unbiased while allegedly pointing people toward whatever would pay them the most as some sort of broker. So if your default is to distrust everyone in this space, honestly, I get it. I'm a bit distrustful these days myself. That's the whole reason I want to tell you about Chapter. They're independent Medicare advisors whose entire model is that their advisors are not paid to push any one plan. They're just trying to help. Yes, there's compensation that goes with it, but it's across the board is what they're trying to do. At the end of the day, they're advocating for you. They're not the insurance companies themselves. They're an actual person who actually goes through your doctors, your prescriptions, your needs, and then compares them to every single plan available to find the best one that will work for you and hopefully save you a couple dollars too. And here's the part that sets Chapter apart. They don't disappear once you've been enrolled. They will keep advocating for you. They're kind of like almost like a concierge service. You're just there. I need help. You're like customer service. The plan, help me navigate this again. So you ever get hit with a wrongful medical bill, they'll help you fight it. They want to stay an advocate for you even after you've done this. So look, I get it. I think there's all sorts of space. You see a lot of people are throwing themselves in this healthcare space. What I like about these Chapter folks, I've spent time with them. This is a very transparent organization. It is Medicare and all of its affiliated stuff can be very confusing. The whole point of this is to make this easier and less confusing. Okay, so look, take the skepticism you already have in all of this, point it at your own plan for 20 minutes. It's free, there's no pressure, and then call Chapter today at 980-734-3985.
Let's talk about, let's say you're a president of the United States in the next pandemic. I've always said, look, Fauci was in a no-win situation. If you're not, and I've always I expect government tells me all sorts of things I shouldn't do, whether it's air quality warning, whether it's ingesting a certain product, whether it's alcohol, tobacco, cannabis, right? There's plenty of government warnings. And if the government didn't provide those warnings and folks were harmed by it, there would be all sorts of lawsuits, political retribution for not warning the American people of these dangers. So I have always assumed that government's job is to basically be probably a little bit more cautious because you're governing 350 million people. And that at the end of the day, we live in somewhat of ultimately, it's up to you, right? We don't tell you shouldn't smoke. We warn you of the problems. Nobody said you had to wear a mask in your own house and all these places. We just warned you what would happen if we did. Do you believe that in hindsight, Fauci was overly cautious, or do you think that federal government has to be overly cautious?
Well, I think Dr. Fauci was providing the best advice he could at the time in dealing with something that none of us had ever seen. To me, I made my decisions through what is almost a basic math equation, and it was about saving the most lives. Listen, I had to put my head down on my pillow every night, having read the death list out loud that day. Even if it was going to get me run out of town, I was going to do the best I could to save the most people. But that does not mean...
Do you remember which days, I'm sure you do, where you couldn't believe the death toll in your state?
I remember the first time that we lost someone. I remember the first time we had 10. Yeah. I remember the first time we had 100. I remember the first time that I knew someone on that list. And I remember the time that I knew about 5 people on it. It's one of the toughest things I've ever had to do. But every day I addressed the people of Kentucky, and every day I read that list because I didn't want anybody else to have to. But having governed through that, the way to do this is the rules and the regulations and how effective they could be times the number of people that will follow them. Right? You have the health piece, and then you have, I don't want to call it the political piece, but just knowing what's a little too much for folks, and trying to hit that sweet spot where people would be willing to sacrifice for each other. And in many ways, looking back, and I talked about it at the time, this was the ultimate test of the parable of the Good Samaritan. Right? Are you willing to sacrifice in your own life for things to be a little uncomfortable if it saves someone else's life? And here it's probably someone that you would never know and you would never meet, but you were called on to do it. I think one thing that we missed from the federal level, if we could go back in time, is a real call to patriotism. Now, this was coming to take as many American lives. In Kentucky, we lost more people.
So you're identifying what I've always thought was the biggest problem with COVID is we just had the wrong leader in the wrong moment. It was a leadership vacuum more than anything.
If you think about losing more people, at least in Kentucky, to it than we did to the Vietnam, Korean War, World War II put together, then this was in many ways the war of our time, coming for as many of our friends and neighbors as it could. And that's how we cast it here. And when people look back here, sure, they have questions. And if we knew everything at the end, at the beginning, remember, we're dealing with a different strain at that point, though.
Oh, my. I mean, that's the thing. It's easy now to say, well, I guess maybe we could have opened schools here. We could have done maybe 2 weeks on, 2 weeks off. But that's because we know how it all worked.
And I think a miss at the federal level that we got right early on in Kentucky and then others followed is teachers and educators needed to be in that very first batch for the vaccine. We needed to recognize that one of the most important things that we needed open and fully open were our schools. And that should have been that 1A category when we look back.
I had Michael Osterholm on, who was sort of in the academia world, sort of the expert I'd go to if Fauci wasn't available back during those times. And, you know, the one thing that I know he recommended at the time, and it just never took off because, frankly, there wasn't enough trust out there, is that he really wanted a weather forecasting like model, meaning, hey, guess what? For 2 weeks, we know when the peak in Florida is different than the peak in Michigan. The peak in New York was different than the peak in Nevada. And we saw this, right? In Florida, it was in the hottest months or when everybody went inside, which then created more spread. Ironically, in the cold months in the South, it was better, but that was tougher. And the point being is that that is easily probably the fairest critique you could come with the administration, is that it was too much of a one size fits all policy.
And the idea that there's a relief valve, that when it's safer for people to be able to go out.
This was all about hospital beds, right? I mean, that's what your folks were telling you all the time. It was about ICU bed capacity, right?
And for us, we never ran out of hospital beds, but that's because we expanded Medicaid years before. And because of that, we had rural hospitals that were still open. And so I got to see firsthand what that type of policy that you do during times when you are not in a pandemic or in a crisis can do for you later. And so, for instance, when I talk about how bad that big ugly bill is, about how it's going to close 35 rural hospitals across Kentucky, decimate rural economies because it's the largest payroll, fire 20,000 Kentucky healthcare workers, I'm also thinking about that next crisis that we have. And it could be a big interstate pileup where now the hospital is an hour and a half away when it used to be 20 minutes. There are just real world repercussions that we should know because we've lived through all this.
I want to talk about political labels. As I wrote a column recently, I think moderation needs some better PR. The word moderate. And because I will say when I say moderate, I'm always thinking temperament more than anything else. But I don't think it's a subjective word. So rather than me apply words to you, when you hear yourself described as a moderate, you accept it? You not accept it? How would you push back? Ditto with the word centrist. And is there a distinction in your mind?
Well, I consider myself pragmatic. not progressive, not moderate, but pragmatic. My job as governor is to solve people's problems. It's about bringing in more jobs with better wages. It's about building more housing than most of the rest of the country is doing. It's about expanding and not contracting healthcare, bringing it to areas like West Louisville or Appalachia, where we just don't see enough. As governor, you can't sit and be ideological. You've got to find the way to better people's lives and do it as fast as possible. Those that would call
you have
me
a
moderate,
political incentive to be that way, though.
well, those that
Arguably,
would
you couldn't get stuff done if you tried to be a hard progressive in Kentucky as governor, correct?
Well, what I'd say is those that call me moderate see being pro-business and pro-worker, strongly pro-union, but creating all those jobs, trying to make the economy work. Those that consider me progressive see that I vetoed every anti-LGBTQ plus bill in a Trump plus 31 state, every anti-diversity bill, that I'm the first Kentucky governor and candidate for governor that ever ran a pro-reproductive freedom ad during his election. And so, I think we put people in boxes, and no one fits directly in those. And I think that's a challenge inside the Democratic Party and with some of the media that we're often on, is that there's just this battle to label everyone, and everyone's more complicated. And I think that's one of the reasons I win in Kentucky, is that I can sit down and talk to someone who might label themselves as a conservative. We're going to have something in common.
Why do you think that this is? I mean, you hear from the left, you talk to these progressives, you've got to make a decision about Wisconsin governor potentially, where somebody who's calls themselves a socialist may be the Democratic nominee. How big should the Democratic tent be?
Well, the Democratic tent has to be big, and we have to try to find common ground. That does not mean we have to agree on everything, nor should we. The Democratic Party should be a party of democracy where we can have hard conversations, but that's different than fighting. Some people would think that Elizabeth Warren and I are in different parts of the Democratic Party, yet we've had multiple conversations on pre-K for all 4-year-olds in the United States, what that could do for everyone, Democrat, Republican, and independent. I mean, an actual solution where we can work together, and whether it is in the Democratic Party and its differences or Democrats and Republicans, how about we focus 80% of our time on those things that matter to 100% of the American people? If we can actually make an aspirational investment in housing, tie federal funds to having to break ground quickly and build, and thus push through regulation and NIMBYism, we can actually do some things that we all agree on. And I bet if we had some success, we could talk about the things we disagree on a little bit better.
Why do you think the activist left is so angry at the Democratic establishment? What do you believe are the sources of this? I have a theory, but I don't want to share it until I hear yours.
Well, I think that there are folks on both ends of both parties that feel like the country is broken. They feel like the economy is broken, and they feel like government is broken. On the economy, it's the belief that the American dream is no longer possible, that people are working hard, playing by the rules, but they can't afford a house until they're 40, when their parents bought it in their late 20s, and they can't afford to take their kids, if they've had them, on that same vacation they went on. That's got to make you feel like a failure. And when you believe something's rigged, well, maybe you think it needs to be burnt down, or there need to be bigger solutions. On the government side, I mean, just look at Mitch McConnell not showing up for 6 weeks and not even looking at a camera and saying why. So I believe the Democratic Party, and I believe all parts of it, can be the party of making that economy work again, immediately pulling tariffs on groceries back, making that investment in housing. But let me tell you, on the government side, I do think we should think big. I think it's time for a constitutional amendment. And I know most people say, oh, that never happens. It does after times of turmoil. So I think we go big with it. I think we outlaw partisan gerrymandering and put parts of the Voting Rights Act directly in the Constitution. I think that we overturn Citizens United and get corporate money out of politics. I think we set term limits for Congress and the Supreme Court so people can't game when people step down or not, and then try to elongate terms. And
I assume you would take age limits if you couldn't get people to agree to term limits. But either way, it's sort of
it's something. It's something I'd look at. I see a Jim Clyburn who is as sharp as he can be, and his leadership is needed. So I see term limits as as a way to be able to respect people of all ages that have the capacity and are ready to go. And for me, and I believe that we should directly elect the president and vice president, because in Kentucky, we never see them unless they come for money. And that's most of the rest of the country. So we've got these campaigns about who's about to be our next leader that understand 6 states, because that's where they've got to win.
My basic theory is that there is a loud and angry Democratic electorate that essentially blames Democrats for the return of Trump.
Well, Democrats are good at blaming other Democrats when Republicans are doing something wrong.
Yeah.
And sometimes it's the you're not blaming the bank
But
robber.
you know this argument that basically had Biden, had the Biden situation, had Biden handled Biden better, had there been sort of whatever you want to, maybe had Biden announced immediately after the 22 midterms, I'm not seeking a second term. There's all sorts of what ifs, and ultimately, frankly, I hear it from friends and fans, like a better president and a better term would have sent the message, would have at least led the country to turn the page on Trump. Is that a fair criticism?
Well, I think that the Democratic Party should always be willing to accept criticism because it makes us better. But living in a woulda, coulda, or shoulda, when we're dealing with Donald Trump right now, when we're dealing with a Congress that won't be a constitutional check, when you have a Supreme Court allowing him to do what he is doing, is losing focus on a critical moment for our country. Our job right now has to be to win in November. And so we can either call out the Republicans for doing these terrible things, like 11,000 Kentucky kids have lost SNAP benefits because of the big ugly bill. That's 11,000 kids that are hungry today that previously weren't. We can either blame the people that did that, which are congressional Republicans and Trump, or we can yell at each other. I certainly know which one would be more effective.
Going back to Wisconsin, do you think Francisca Hong can win?
I think it's going to be a competitive primary. As head of the DGA, I can't get involved in those primaries, but I believe that we will see, as it comes down to the wire, at least one candidate emerge who has a strong message and can ultimately win in November.
Wisconsin's a strange state in this respect, in that it is a swing state with no swing voters, is how I always put it. No swing counties. It's an unusual state in that it's so evenly divided, but the bases of the two parties have almost outsized influence on those there. I think you're going to it's possible you'll have a Democratic nominee that many think is outside the mainstream and a Republican nominee that many feel is outside the mainstream. What's the pitch if that's the case?
Well, first, let me say that there was big worry in California, and that worked out. There was a lot of worry in Michigan, and that's working out. And so I think sometimes we don't give enough respect to Democratic voters, that when it gets down to it, they are going to understand that electability is absolutely critical and choose the candidate that they believe is most electable. Go back to 20 in the presidential race. And Pete won Iowa, though we didn't know it until days later.
Yeah.
Bernie won the second state,
New Hampshire, yeah.
And then South Carolina comes, and Joe Biden,
who everybody said was... Don't forget Nevada in there.
Oh, yeah. But then South Carolina comes, and Joe Biden, who was left for dead by all the political consultants, is a presumptive Democratic nominee. Now, I think what you're going to see in Wisconsin are voters coming together. But I would always say that if you look at this country, right now, one party is breaking it, and the other party, while we might not always agree on the right solution, is trying to fix it. The party of Donald Trump told you they'd bring down costs, yet his tariffs and his war with Iran are hitting every single American family hard and making it that much more difficult. So whichever part of the Democratic Party you are in, you are committed to making people's lives better. Now, we might have to talk about the avenue to do that, but I would always want to vote for that person that I believe would get out there and fight for ultimately that better life.
This episode of the Chuck ToddCast is brought to you by my friends at FanDuel. Baseball fans, do you think you know who's hitting a homer today? You think Curtis Mead might do it now as a Bostonian over that green monster? Well, FanDuel is giving you a free chance to call your shot with daily dingers. been pretty good if you're a CJ Abrams acolyte like we are over here in Team Chuck ToddCast. Anyway, joining the action is easy. Just make your free pick on who's hitting a home run in their game. And if you're right, you'll get a profit boost on your next bet for a chance at extra winnings. So you've got nothing to lose and a lot to gain. And don't forget, you can make a free pick every single day during the MLB season. Just try to predict the homer. It's just another reason why FanDuel is the home for home runs. So are you ready to play your game today? Join all the action at FanDuel.com. That's FanDuel.com to play daily dingers and make your free pick. It is free. No obligation on this one on who's hitting a homer. Play ball, swing for the fences on FanDuel, an official partner of Major League Baseball. 21 plus in select states. For Kansas, an affiliation with the Kansas Star Casino. It's 18 plus in D.C., Kentucky, Wyoming. If you have a gambling problem, call 1-800-GAMBLER or 1-800-MY-RESET or call 1-888-789-7777. You can also visit ccpg.org/chat in Connecticut. You can visit the mdgamblinghelp.org in Maryland for help. You can visit gamblinghelplinema.org. You can call 800-327-5050 in Massachusetts. You can call 1-877-8-HOPE-NY, or you can simply text HOPE-NY New York in order to get some help with any gambling concerns. Finally, you can also call 1-877-770-7867 if you're in Louisiana.
I want to look at the governor's map through the presidential swing states. North Carolina, I believe, of the big seven, is the only one that doesn't have a governor's race. That's already got a Democratic governor. So you got Georgia, open seat. Is this your most expensive state?
Georgia, we are going to play big in. Keisha Lance Bottoms came out of what should have been a really tough primary and dominated it. Like a lot of the other candidates that were in there too, but obviously has an incredible amount of talent. Polls are either close or have her up. I think there is a huge opportunity in Georgia. John Ossoff is also running there, and there's some good synergies where I believe we are going to flip Georgia.
But you do have a Republican nominee. I will say this, I'm sure you wish there was a different Republican nominee. Fair?
Well, I believe that we have a Republican nominee that we can beat. It's just going to be expensive to do so.
Yeah, that is an enormous ad buy he just announced. I mean, I feel sorry for anybody running down the ballot. Good luck finding airtime, right?
But I would say that's a critical election. Look at Arizona, where we have a sitting Democratic governor running against an election denier. If you want a full and fair election in 2028, Katie Hobbs has to be reelected, and that's really ground zero for fair elections.
Well, as much as I said you probably didn't like the way the Republican primary turned out in Georgia, I'm guessing you had no problem with how the Republican primary turned out in Arizona.
I believe
the situation.
I believe that Katie Hobbs is going to win that race. She's a good governor. She's working hard. She's running in a tough state. But at a time when people are struggling, this is the only social worker that's been elected governor in the country. She had to drive an Uber or a Lyft to support her kids during her life. She is very connected to the moment. But as you look at the map, though, the goal in the governor's races is to expand it. How 28 looks is how we do in 2026 in those races. When Rob Sand wins Iowa, and he's going to, and that flips, that's in play in 28. When Amy Acton wins Ohio, and I believe that's very much in play, Ohio is in play in 28.
It's interesting, and I want to get to more of that. Let's go to Nevada. This was I always say the second hardest thing to do in politics is to knock off a sitting governor. It's not easy. I know it's not easy to win a second term, but it's also very difficult. You don't see it often. Only thing harder is to knock off sitting presidents. Usually voters have this, well, we're going to give them the second term unless they're really upset. And obviously, I always say with governors to select, you try running for reelection and shut down the and shut down the strip. It's just you're just asking for it's like playing baseball with no hands. Good luck. But what's your sense in that race? It's a huge financial disparity, but all the polls have shown it very close.
Oh, I think we're going to win. And I'm a guy who knocked off a sitting incumbent governor, and we would still have a Democratic governor of Nevada. just like you said, but for the pandemic. And the pandemic hit tourism and hit tourism hard. And so is Donald Trump. When you look at Las Vegas right now, it's down. And it's down in part because of Trump's attacks repeatedly on Canada and Canadians not coming
I've heard this.
either to Las Vegas or, by the way, buying Kentucky bourbon. It has hit.
By the way, they're not coming to Florida either. Okay. I mean, we're losing the Canadians. We were in the Bahamas. They were all in the Bahamas, is what we found out over the holidays.
So,
Anyway.
so you take their economy being down, along with so many hardworking Latino Americans that are afraid because of ICE to go to work, whether that's in Vegas or Reno or other places. And then we got a really good candidate. So General Ford and I have been friends for a long time. I was with the Democratic Attorney General's Association when he won. I would never count him out. He is a fighter. He's somebody that the people of Nevada believe in. And if you look at the Colorado primary, Democratic AGs are doing pretty well right now.
Yeah. Don't tell that to my friend Michael Bennett.
He is a good man that gets to continue in the Senate.
It's a pretty good message. Look, we talked about Wisconsin enough. You don't sound enthusiastic about the current front runner in that race.
Oh, it's still going on, and all three major candidates are reaching out, which they all should be pushing to win. But I've always believed a contested primary creates a better general election candidate. The winner of that will be ready. Will have gone through all of the trials and tribulations, and we'll be ready to take on whoever we get from the other side.
You briefly mentioned Michigan, but that feels like that literally went from sort of a constant source of potential problems to suddenly, look, she's not going to win in a walk. It's a tough race, but now she's favored.
Jocelyn Benson is going to be a great candidate. Now, she still has.
I think she's been a very good candidate to be. That's why Duggan dropped, is because of her candidacy.
And I think, to his credit, Duggan had been a great mayor. Had been a good Democrat. And when he saw that he didn't have a lane and that he might be a spoiler, he did a thing very few in politics do. He checked his ego. He stepped out. And for that, I think he ought to be commended. She's working incredibly hard. That primary against a really good sheriff. And I hope he continues in some form or fashion. But I believe she is the next governor of Michigan.
You talked about Iowa. I've been obsessed with Ohio. In fact, I think there's a real scenario that she can win regardless of the Senate race. I know some people think it's very tied. I don't know if I'm just curious of your experience in these places. Georgia and Ohio are probably the two most interesting tests of this, which is correlation between governor's races and Senate races. What's your sense on them, and voters that split? Where does that usually fall in your experience?
I believe that people are willing to take a second look at a gubernatorial candidate outside of just the partisanship.
They'll look past jersey color. It's like, instead of just looking at the jersey.
That's right, because in many ways, if you're in the Senate, you are one of 100. When you're governor, you're one of one. We don't vote. It's not a group body where we get together. You are the leader of your state. And people have a direct connection with their governor. In Kentucky, people don't call me governor. They call me Andy. And that's probably why I'm still in this job. You are on the ground every single day with people. And it's more likely that anyone going to vote may have met someone running for governor and or knows someone that knows them. So it's much more personal. I believe that Sherrod Brown will win. Now, do I think Amy Acton may run 2 points above? Yes. I think she's running a great race. I have been in that area a bunch, especially in the Cincinnati suburbs area a bunch, and she is doing really well. Think about this. He has poured tens of millions of dollars in, and he has not moved the needle. It's either tied or she's a little up, and now it's her turn. And to me, his race feels a lot like Elon Musk coming in Wisconsin and trying to buy it.
I know if I were running for office, I'd love to run against somebody who was pals with Elon Musk.
Well, and that's where Ramaswamy is.
And I think he knows. I know him a little bit. He's not stupid. I think he knows he's got uphill battle. Let's talk about two races that I bet you hear a lot about, but realistically, they're long shots. Even when they end up races that'll probably be decided by 5 points or less, and that is my home state of Florida and the great large big state of Texas. I mean, in theory, right? You've got this, 10-year incumbent in Abbott, and I think fatigue is there. You kind of see it. It's tough. It's a path to 47. The question is, can you get to 50? I've interviewed Byron Donalds. I've spent time with David Jolly. I've done here. I think he's going to be a very good candidate. I think people underestimate him at their own peril, and we'll see on Jolly. I say that because arguably Florida Democrats tried this 4 years ago and it failed spectacularly. So what's your sense, and where is DGA money going to be prioritized?
Well, we are watching them both very closely, and there will be races that might not be in the top 3 or 4 that people talk about that open up. That there might be a candidate on the other side that we learn is like Mark Robinson from North Carolina. And so
you get one of those gifts. Yeah.
Our goal is to be funded enough and strong enough to play in anywhere we can win, especially coming down the stretch. Gina Hinojosa in Texas is a good candidate that's out there working hard, trying to create her own luck. David Jolly is in a good position in Florida, and we will see what that looks like, again, as we go down the stretch. So we're going to make wise decisions with the DGA, but we're going to make sure that we have the flexibility to win the maximum number of states.
Is it hard, though, with Texas and Florida, how expensive they are? I mean, I don't meaning like I sit here and go, if you're not in yet, I don't know if you come in late, whether that money would make, let's say you threw $5 million at Florida in October. I think I don't know if that does as much as throwing $5 million at Aaron Ford in Nevada.
Well, we're going to be strategic about all of it, but my goal is to have us strong enough to where even in those big states, coming down the stretch, if it's close, that we could hopefully move that needle.
I want to get you out of here on the presidential stuff. You've not, it's something you'll think about. It's something you're not doing the, please don't ask me about it, but ask me about it, wink and a nod, which I appreciate. I think those days are over, right? In our political media. What do you think?
I do. And so for me, I'm at the same place that I've been. I've got a job this year, and that's to win as many governor's races as I can. And if I concentrate on that, I help whoever the Democratic nominee for president is to have more states to win. And so that's my focus. And then I'm going to sit down with my family and we'll make a decision. I'll say this. I never thought I'd be in the position to even consider it, but I just will not leave a broken country to my kids. And being a person who can win in a Trump plus 31 state, I think I offer something to the conversation. We need to make sure that we have a candidate that can relate to people, that can bring more people on board. And what I want most is for my kids and one day grandkids to have the same stability in this United States that I did growing up.
Is this a campaign that if you're going to do it, you need to go in early? Do you think this is a January, February decision, or is this a June, July decision for you in 27?
I think it'll be different for everyone. Certainly, I'm not going to sit down and take any type of action until I'm done being DGA chair in late December. And then I'm going to celebrate Christmas with my family, and then we'll figure it out.
What do you, this primary calendar, South Carolina leading off, Virginia as the bookend. I say that because I'm of the Ricky Bobby rule. If you ain't first, you're last. And in some ways that's what I focus on in this window. But what do you make of the entire calendar?
Well, I think the calendar is going to create a candidate that can be competitive in the South, that can be competitive in the Midwest, that can ultimately create the type of appeal that reaches all Americans, because all Americans are struggling with the same general issues. I will say, having two southern states, I'm happy that the DNC recognizes that the South was left out, was underfunded, and was sometimes even looked down upon by our party. But look at how we scrap back. We have 3 Southern Democratic governors Thanks to Georgia, we have 2 Southern Democratic U.S. senators, and Roy Cooper is about to be another.
Do you consider Kentucky a southern state or a border state?
Well, we've got different parts of Kentucky that consider themselves different things. I'm from Lexington, which is certainly southern. I lived in Louisville for a long time, which probably considers itself Midwestern. Typically, I try to be whichever one will get us the best grant from the federal government or anywhere else.
Well, considering that this administration does apparently take politics into consideration of every decision that they make, so I don't blame you there. But it is that, I guess that's an age-old debate: is Kentucky a southern state or not? Right?
I will say I consider myself southern,
Okay.
but different folks across our state may have different ideas. My job is just to represent all of them the best I can.
Israel, is this an issue that is going to be so divisive that it splinters the party and makes some elections unwinnable? Are you concerned about this?
I don't think it should, because I think the approach that the Democratic Party ought to have in Israel is what we would hope countries in Europe would think about us. Now, countries in Europe are anti-Trump, and they should be, but I hope they're still pro-America. So I believe that the Democratic Party candidates, sitting elected officials, you can be anti-Netanyahu. You can think he is engaged in actions that caused needless suffering, but you can still be pro-Israel, recognizing that it's a democratic state, a Jewish state, and that our security interests are tied to each other.
I'm going to get you out of here on this. I did back-to-back interviews in the last 2 weeks with Byron Donalds and with Doug Jones. And by the way, I'm asking about Alabama. Is Doug Jones going to get DGA help?
We're watching Doug Jones' race really closely. He's a friend, but their primary, they doubled the Democratic turnout from 4 years before. And that is pretty amazing. South Carolina.
He shared with me basically a math equation that anytime this has happened, it has led you. I'm sure you've seen this
he said
analysis.
That to me too.
Yeah. And that it is indicated that it's going to be a victory for that party. Do you buy it?
Well, he is a good man and a good candidate that is putting the state in play, and we're going to be watching it very closely. Doug would be a fantastic governor.
Well, I bring it up because he said this to me. He goes, I said, what is the top issue you're talking about? He goes, well, right now it's data centers. Everywhere I go, it's data centers, data centers, data centers. I spent a lot of time on this issue over the last 6 months. I'm pretty convinced people's anger about data centers aren't about the data centers. Meaning that this is about big tech. This is about something much larger. But I'll be honest, I feel like the political answers have all been small ball. A lot of people are looking at this as a NIMBY issue, and I have a feeling it's not. Do you share my view on this, or do you think this really is one of an old Tip O'Neillism, that this is just a classic case of all politics is local?
Now, I think this is 2 things. Number one, it's concern about AI. Some of it, rightful concern about AI and what it's going to do to our lives. On one end, the medical research that could be done through it could end every genetic disease that we know of, combined with CRISPR, and that's a world I hope for. On another end, it could take millions of jobs. It could make us less safe. And right now, we don't have a federal government that will create the type of rules, regulations, and guidelines that are needed. And so people see it coming. And people say it'll be as big as moving from farms to factories. And yeah, that's going to create fear. On the actual placing of the data centers, I will say this: these companies are about to invest massive amounts of money, maybe 10 or 100 times more than their headquarters, but they don't come to these communities. They don't talk to people and assure them, if they are going to be that big of a part of the community, that it's going to be a net benefit. And for me, 3 rules that you have to start with before you ever have the conversation. Number one, you pay for all your own power, not 1 cent on the backs of our people that pay too much already. That's transmission, that's production. Now, number 2, you got to pay your fair share of taxes, because you're not going to employ that many people, but you may kick off enough to the school system to double its budget because of property taxes, pay teachers more, and have the resources to address that displacement. But third, and it's where I started, you got to get in there and make the community want you. These facilities are not going to be successful in the long term unless these companies develop a little more of a human side, get into the community, and talk about the real benefits and have one-on-one conversations with those that are concerned.
Do you think it should go as far as, look, all these guys want to, it was something Doug Jones brought up to me. He said one of the fears he came across is that what have we all learned about technological advances over the last 30 years? Meaning what you think is on the front end of a technological change is suddenly obsolete within 24 or 36 months. And that, right now, especially wherever you go, there's abandoned strip malls all over the country. Will data centers in 10 years, when all this is moved into space, as Elon Musk and Jeff Bezos dream of, are we going to have like a bunch of abandoned, data centers that get turned? Believe it or not, there's strip malls near me that here in Florida that have been turned into churches. An old Staples down the streets is now a church. They even kept the sliding doors, the auto sliding doors, which I found interesting. But that's a real fear that all these local communities are basically being asked to be a stopgap while these companies hurry up with this advancement and eventually get to the point where they don't need these data centers.
I think you're pointing out the uncertainty in all of it. People don't know if it's going to be Y2K. We know it's going to be bigger than that, or if it's going to be data centers on the moon. And that is just a huge spread for people to try to think about and deal with. When I think about those strip malls, I've actually seen them go from the mall to the church to now a healthcare facility. Because
I've seen that. There's one that got turned into a high school, I think, too, and they even kept the escalators.
We ought to look at that. But this is a part of having good leaders, rational leaders that put the American people first, because we don't know what step 3 of this might look like, and it's going to be scary for the American people. But our job will be to address it together in a transparent way that puts people first.
This last question's totally going to be out of left field for you, but I think you'll enjoy it. One of my favorite books that I've ever read is on the history of the ABA. And one of the great franchises in the ABA were the Kentucky Colonels.
Kentucky Colonels.
NBA wants to expand. They've said they want to expand. They've identified Seattle and Las Vegas. When I see the success of Oklahoma City, and I see the success of Indianapolis just in general and what we've seen, but particularly basketball crazy with the Fever and the Pacers, Louisville should be an NBA market, right? The state of Kentucky should have an NBA team. If the state of Oklahoma has an NBA team, the state of Kentucky, one of the, in some ways, foundational basketball states that there are, should have one. Is there an effort? Is there, Louisville has always been right there. Are they going to take the leap to Major League City? You're watching Nashville do this. What's your sense? And does Louisville have the business support to pull it off?
The Commonwealth of Kentucky is ready. Louisville is the largest media market in the country that doesn't have one of the big sports. And so we are ready. We have the business community to do it. We have an NBA ready arena right now, so that would not be an extra cost.
Is basketball probably 1 on the list and baseball 2, or what would be your sense of what's realistic?
We have the facilities right now for basketball, and it would work. I mean, the NFL will work anywhere. If the NFL wants to bring a franchise,
you can do that. Right. It works in Green Bay and Jacksonville. It's going to work anywhere. We know.
We'll get that stadium built, and people can go from Indy to Louisville to Nashville. We'll all
I'm sure you'd love
everywhere.
that. Yeah.
But the NBA is the one where I think we're tailor made and we're ready. And whether that's a new team, whether that's a team that might be looking for a new home, I'm
looking at you, Memphis. Oh, did I say that out loud?
I'm just a call away, and our people would support it. We would fill up that arena every day. I mean, I remember when the Titans came to Nashville. I was in school in Nashville and watched how a community that no one thought could support a team came together with one of the biggest launches that I'd seen.
No, it just feels as if Louisville's more than ready. And
We're ready.
look, as somebody who doesn't love when my Miami Hurricanes have to play the Louisville Cardinals in Louisville, it's a great fan base. It's a great community. And you guys already host one of the great events annually for the world. So count me in on cheerleading for Louisville NBA.
As we close, I guess I will make one announcement that I don't know what my future in politics will look like, but president of basketball operations is a job I would strongly consider.
Who's your NBA team?
So when you're in Kentucky, you don't really have an NBA
you follow
home.
The UK players. Is that what you do?
We do. So Karl Anthony Towns winning that championship. What a good human being. Shy in Oklahoma City, we're real proud of. Tyrese Maxey is about to play with LeBron and Brown in a great team. So we love watching our players go. Anthony Davis is one of all of our favorites. So we follow him wherever he goes.
Boy, it's interesting. It's all UK with you, huh?
So when you were the governor of Kentucky, you have two jobs: to root for your in-state schools and to root against Duke.
All right. Governor Beshear, really appreciate the time.
Thanks for having me.